Wake up, buy here, pay here people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning, everybody.
We're back. It's Wednesday.
It is.
Happy
White Hat Wednesday. Yeah, it was like,
yeah, go
do you
start
have-
the show without me, would you?
So we ran back.
Yeah. made all these notes for the show. And
I know.
they're upstairs.
During our coffee time. Yeah, go ahead and shout out where you guys are listening from today.
Please.
We always like to see who's tuning in. So did you get the link
Nope.
added? No, we got the link added, or we'll get the link added for Monday's episode.
Yeah, so you can just do a search. I mean, if you watch Monday's episode, we talked about some key numbers, and we have an old YouTube video out there, an old webinar that we did. It covers a lot of those in more depth. So I still have that on my to-do list, so I'll make sure and get that added to the thread from Monday's episode.
And then Brent Carmichael is on Friday. And just really, really enjoy him. We get quite a few giggles in.
It's always
when
fun.
we're together.
And listen, there's just very few people in the industry with more experience than Brent Carmichael. Right?
Well, to tell you how much experience, Brent Carmichael was Jim's 20 group moderator.
He was my second 20 group moderator. Yeah. I was with NCM when, as a dealer, whenever Brent joined them. And so he became my moderator. So that's how I got to know him. That was somewhere around 08, 07.
Nice.
So yeah,
it's been a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really fun for me to get to know him. He's a really knowledgeable, great way of he has a great way of articulating ideas.
And he is a prince of a guy who is happy to ask the hard questions.
And he does. And they do an awful lot of podcasting together with Tote the Note, which is kind of more the hard questions.
Yeah.
So today is White Hat Wednesday.
It is. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're here to kind of talk about this is the month of collections, and we just have a few more episodes left in the month of May. And this one is about why there is friction, drama associated with conflict. Use
a word of your choice.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of struggles. We see that. And I got to say, I think what you and I see is that this is kind of an area where you and I will be doing a lot of our coaching in the coming years, is like where I see us kind of taking on this stuff about why is there conflict? Why do we just kind of accept that that's the way it is and the way it's always going to be, especially when I consider some of our past polls suggest, and I didn't fish them out for this morning, but it's like, I know that our polls suggest, we just referred to it in a recent episode, about only 10%, like single digits.
It was less than 10%.
Of the dealers who responded to our poll said less than 10% of the customers are true troublemakers. So if that's true, why is there so much noise out there in the collection department, so much conflict, negative reviews? Like, why?
Because they really truly are the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. And so if we really focus on the rule, if most customers have decent intentions, and if we have decent intentions, there shouldn't be so much conflict.
Agreed.
Right. So it's like, let's keep working to get to the bottom of that. I think we're going to offer some suggestions today based on our own perspective. And I think, like we talked about a little bit on Monday, I think that was Monday when we talked about this thing with dealers becoming known, liked, and trusted. I think for today, when I'll just remind our listeners who are tuning in, didn't see the title, we're talking about why so much friction and drama in the buy here, pay here collection departments. And so the question really, when we look at it, is there's several elements to this. And one of them is we feel like collectors could do more, or collection supervisors, or, dealers who manage those teams or oversee those teams could help to have the collectors become more known, liked, and trusted themselves.
We talk an awful lot about that known, liked, and trusted as a dealer. Because, you're your dealership, your dealer, it's you're about ready to step into a 3+, and again, your 10-year approach.
Right.
So we're looking at this as, how do we foster a good relationship that we anticipate is going to last 10+ years?
Right.
And so, good guy, the known, liked, and trusted. And just as the business in general, but we were talking this morning about who is it that has the most communication, who is the representative of the dealership during the lion's share of your relationship with the dealership, and that would be your collectors.
Right.
And we kind of we were talking a little bit about if you're looking at this from the lens of a consumer, the customer looking in, what perception, this is a really great question to ask yourself. What does interaction with your collection department look like?
Yeah.
Like if you were to, put yourself in those boots, that you're having a difficult time, or, you're a little bit late, whether or not because you're having a difficult time or you just forgot or whatever it is, what does it look like for your customer, for our customers, when that interaction?
Yeah, I think that is an important question to go out and ask. I think, and of course, our friend and fellow colleague and coach Maggie Pagesic was with us last Friday, and she can actually do what does she call it? Mystery shopping.
Yeah.
So obviously, a lot of times that's done on the retail side or the sales side, but it can also be done on the collection side, and so we can kind of have a chance to survey that, because I do think it's important for dealers to have a good feel for what is the customer experience like on the collection side. If 90% of the customers have good intentions, then maybe if our repo rate is running high, we should first ask ourselves, how much of that could be us?
Yeah.
That's always an important question.
I wanted to point out, George posted something. He says, does the 80-20 rule apply in collections? Certain percentage pay with almost no problems ever, and the troublemakers who won't pay and end up being repossessed, and the 80% require and respond to our efforts building relationship. I think from my perspective, I think it does, like 80% of the people that you work with are like, it's just golden. I mean, you don't have any problems. So in that 20% are two groups of people.
Yeah, George, at the 2021 NABD Super Forum now, then it was called whatever it's called now. It's called the Super Forum. But anyway, we actually drew a pie chart. Like we had dealers on the stage and we had them draw a pie chart. And I would say, based on my own experience, it's more like the pie chart that we typically draw would be more like let me make sure I get my math right here. 60, 35, 5. Like it would be 60% of the customers are no trouble at all. They ACH and you almost never talk to them. And then 35% are on a group I might call high maintenance, or that I have traditionally called high maintenance. They just require some hand holding and they're not real good at managing the money. So we kind of got to stay after them a little bit. So that's that group. And then that 5 to 10% is just, they're troublemakers. They got through our underwriting and we put them on the books, and they're just a problem, and they're just out to take advantage of everybody. But that's a small group. I mean, we just reconfirmed that through a survey or through a poll in Facebook not long ago, and everybody was saying
like
10%
the
or less.
troublemakers is a really small, but that's what I would encourage dealers to do is don't consider high maintenance the same as troublemakers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're two different things. Troublemakers, like they intend on being a problem.
Yeah. And so obviously we hope to snag those, or hope to identify that in underwriting. If we miss it in underwriting, then we're going to try to, I always say we don't allow that customer to consume much of our energy for very long. If they can be counseled and be made to straighten up and fly right, is the phrase I've always used. Like if they can behave, then they can stay with you. I mean, we don't use this language with the customer, but it's like we just solve the problem. If the customer can't straighten out and perform, then we we end the business relationship and move on, because we can't have our collectors, tied up in that. And that's not the way we want to do business anyway. So I think it's really just that whole thing about high maintenance. And do we let that customer frustrate us? But I think the bigger thing that you and I wanted to get to today is when we look at this whole thing with the collections departments, I think what we see is there's just not enough of a relationship there with the customer and the collection department. So listen, practices vary. In some operations, dealers might, or collection supervisors might divide up a collection list. And a lot of what we're talking about here applies to every operation. But right now I'm talking about these operations that have, at least 2 or 3 collectors on a team. So now they're dividing up the list somehow, or they're otherwise segregating the list and working it. And I'm simply saying we would like to see collectors or the collection team have more of a relationship with the customer, so that they communicate, have some level of communication dialogue, even if that's just a one-way thing where it's newsletters and videos and whatever else. Then we know that having some sort of relationship and understanding of the collector is going to have an impact.
Yes. One of the things we were talking about, like, how do you encourage your collectors? What would you like your collectors to do to build that kind of relationship? And so we were talking about a few different ideas. Again, the long gone are the days where 60% of your clientele, of your book of business, actually physically come into the dealership weekly or biweekly to make their payment. That it doesn't happen anymore. You're probably down to what, 10, 20% tops of people that actually come in. And of those 10 to 20%, they're not all going to be, they're going to be the people that you probably wouldn't have to worry about anyway, or ones that you've made arrangements. And so they're fulfilling their end of the bargain. So how do you do that? And so, we were kind of brainstorming a little bit about how you can encourage how you can create a culture in your collections department and in your book of business, where the collector is their friend,
right?
That they can trust them, but that that they can have the hard conversations with this person. They're going to hold firm to whatever the your policies and all of that are. But how do you do that? And one of the things, and we mentioned this, we talked a little bit with Bill about texting, and obviously you're going to need to have the infrastructure to be able to send texts. And we really do believe that, a friendly text in written form is great, but a video text of, hey, it's Mary, just wanted to let you know that we're doing a thing, and come and join us. Hey, it's Mary. Just wanted to say, hey, thanks so much for making your payment on time today, and or something like that. I mean, something that is that has more has more of a flavor of who the person is, and that you're just friendly, and that
Well,
you're there
any
to
kind of
help.
dialogue that we can have with the customer that is not about a late payment. And
Yeah,
especially if we
that's
can make it a
Yeah.
positive, if we can talk to them about, like you say, there's a giveaway. Hey, we're doing a cookout on Friday, or anything we can do to, increase the dialogue, human to human dialogue. And when we can't reach them on the phone, then a video is the next best thing. We have to be careful with video from a compliance standpoint, because we just got to make sure that, when we talk about payments, we just got to be careful about what we can say from a compliance standpoint. So, we'll ask our listeners to make sure and check the compliance elements of what they do. But really, we're just advocating for, and I use that word advocate because we've also talked about, I think you can do a search and find our past morning show where we talked about advocacy. So that's a little different thing. We're really talking about a person on the team or multiple people that really fill a role of advocacy. Until we have that, though, our collectors can fill that role.
Well, and another thing that we were chatting about this morning is, when you post a position, and like looking for collectors, people are automatically going to that are looking for these listings are automatically, okay, I'm a collector. I have to be a hard da 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 da. I'm about collecting money, and it's not about a relationship. It's about I'm there to collect money and keep payments coming in, and there's certain internal pressures that are associated with that, bonuses, quotas, all of that kind of stuff. What if, and this is something we've worked with a lot of different dealers, that first off is that they're no longer called collectors, that they're customer success representatives, they're customer, we've
Account managers.
account
Yeah.
managers or something, account success managers. And so that just even in the title of the position, that it's like, you're something more. You're something more than just someone who's collecting payments. You're there to be a representative
Mhm.
of your consumer, and to
Sure.
be and the dealership. It's like you're there to help your consumers, your customers be successful. And
Yeah. I think, the way I was thinking about it is like, do does the collection team at any given dealership look like a team of hired guns? Like,
Mm,
are they only deployed when the payment becomes past due and now we're out there doing a job? Because it's pretty hard to make the case for what you just described if
mhm,
the only context or the only dialogue I ever have with the customer is when the account's past due. Now I'm reaching out. I just come across like a hired gun, right?
mhm.
My job is to get that payment in the bank. And so it just kind of feels that way. So, we got Tommy coming to join us. Tommy Brandis, the dealer out of Pennsylvania, will be here with us on the 31st. And Tommy's a big believer in the relationship side. We will talk about, I'm sure, this thing about managing the relationship on the collection side versus underwriting, and
Mhm.
how, in his belief, um, relationship management trumps underwriting. You can you can be more flexible in your underwriting when you're good on the customer relations side and collections. Hard to argue with that. It's like you can solve a lot of problems with, you're just still in your underwriting and trying to avoid the real troublemakers.
Yeah.
But because, we're not in the counseling business, we can't necessarily solve that one,
Yeah.
all the time. But we can, if it just problems regarding, money management or those kind of things, we can work through that stuff. And so I think that's what we have to remember, is that the intentions of most of our customers are good. And if our intentions are good, then it should be easier for us to navigate this. Doesn't mean there won't still be some late payments. There won't be some setbacks, some stuff to work through. But as far as high volume,
Mhm.
high drama conversations, we hope we would have enough equity. We use that word sometimes, but like, that's the nature of trust. In order for us to have some level of trust with the customer, that if we want them to trust us,
Mhm.
then we have to, in our practices, we have to create that. We have to first be known. Can't trust somebody you don't know. So you have to
Mhm.
know them, and
Mhm.
then, you hope you like them, and then you develop some level of trust. But that accumulates over time,
It does, but there are things that you can do to build that.
Yeah.
And I love your thing. Have you hired? Are your collectors hired guns? Are they the enemy?
Yeah.
Because that's if you've hired guns and you've hired someone who it's like they're going to be hard nosed and they're going to do, then you've hired someone that is not. If that's the approach,
Mhm.
then it's not going to have. Um, a level of trust. It's like it's just not going to. You've created an environment where you're not going to be, if it's a hired gun, it's like it's adversarial in
Yeah.
nature.
And I think,
Very.
we know that there are pressures, right?
Mhm.
There are, some of those pressures are internal. Like,
Yeah.
there can be pressures that are created. And when I talk about pressure, I'm talking about the pressure that let's say it can come from different levels. The dealer could be putting pressure on the manager. Manager's then putting pressure on the collections team. Now the
Mhm.
collections team is putting pressure on the customer. Okay. A certain amount of that is the nature of the business, right? The
Mhm.
question becomes, when is our internal pressure causing us to be inconsistent with the customer?
Mm-hmm.
And that causes us to lose some level of trust with the customer. It's like we first have to be consistent. And then in order to, once we create this level of trust, and I saw what Tyler shared there about the empathy part, it's like, yeah, we're
Problem
problem
solvers.
solvers. I've
Empathetic
always
problem
said that
solvers.
about
Mm-hmm.
collections. Like, that's why I like the advocacy term. It's like I'm approaching the customer with tools in my tool belt to help solve a problem. So talk to me. But to talk, like we talked about that one this morning, is like, if I'm your customer and I see that there's a call coming in from Joe's Auto Credit,
Mm-hmm.
do I want to answer the call or not? Like, am I going to talk to a hired gun, or am I going to talk to somebody who genuinely cares about what's going on with me and is willing to work with me? Because my willingness to answer that phone call has a lot to do with what my perception, right or wrong, my perception is about that phone call and that
Mm-hmm.
person that I'm going to, get on the other end of the line. So these are things that I think you and I recognize that, we're having this conversation on a White Hat Wednesday. This is part of how we see White Hat practices,
Mm-hmm.
is breaking this stuff down and starting to understand, how can we build on this relationship? How can we get the customers to communicate and be honest with us? Well, one thing is we got to be honest with them. And I'm not saying that we're not. I'm just saying,
Well, that's one of the white hat ways is honesty,
honesty,
and
but
transparency.
honesty is
And
a two-way street.
it is.
You can't demand honesty from somebody else and then be, fibbing to them the whole time. It's like, or why would they say that we're fibbing to them? Well, it depends. What's the nature of the relationship been up to now? Have we overpromised them on the sales side, and so they think we're not honest? Why should they? That's the way honesty works. It's a simple thing. It's like, I can't demand or expect anybody else to be honest with me if I'm not truthful with them. Right. So we have to sort of create that. And this goes back to that thing about building trust and making deposits. And we have to go first and just demonstrate to the customers that we're here to support them. We're here to solve problems, and we do it in an empathetic way, as Tyler said. And so this is how you start to save more charge-offs, as we talked about before. I had Bill Elizondo on talking about saving repos. These things are part of how you communicate with customers in a way that they start to get it and they trust us and they are prepared to, they're more comfortable communicating with us about whatever's going on. Because if I'm the collector and consistently I'm bringing an approach that, without using the phrase or the language, they can see that my approach is such that I expect you, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, to be with us for a very long time. So today's problem is a very small problem. So we shouldn't have high volume and high drama. It's upsetting. Don't misunderstand. I understand the customer's upset because they're dealing with some sort of setback, and it's frustrating and it's stressful for them. I get that. But my approach to them, I hope, is one that, whatever it is, we'll figure it out. Right?
Absolutely.
Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. It might be something going on in your personal life. It might be, whatever it is. We expect you to be, and again, those words don't have to come out of my mouth, but my approach is, I expect you to be a customer with us for a very long time. So let's figure this out. And so that's kind of I think how we begin to do that. And I just find that that's easy to say. We don't see a lot of it. We don't see a lot of departments using that approach. I see them more. And when I say hired guns, obviously that's inflammatory, but it's like, if I'm a customer and I only hear from you when my account is past due, isn't that the conclusion that I would naturally draw?
Yes. Yeah. So there are a couple of other things that we were chatting about this morning. And one is, it's really important. I mean, you can hire someone as a customer advocate or as customer success, account success manager, whatever, that have already different skills and, that have a great way of communicating with people and all of that. But it's really important that we support them internally too. That as a dealer, as a dealership, as a collection manager, that we offer them a lot of support. And I think that of anyone in the team in a dealership, our collectors are our front line. And so if anyone on the team needs support, it's them. And
And our
so,
service advisors.
and our service,
Service
yes,
managers.
okay, service
Yeah.
managers as well.
Right,
Yes,
yeah.
I absolutely. We don't do an awful lot with service managers,
Right.
but we do, the collectors. And so, how can you support them and help them be better, and help them have a positive attitude, and help them to start their day or their week or whatever? And there's a lot of opportunities. The internet is chock full of inspirational TED Talks, of different influencers that are out there that are about this is how how you connect to people, all of that. So just a little bit of watching something, and as a manager or as a dealer, if you run across something that's like, oh, that's awesome, send it on to your collectors.
Yeah.
So give them that little boost of like, oh, that was a really great thing that I learned. Hey guys, I just wanted to share this with you. Here's something that's positive that we can to help inspire you, support you for the day, and also give them the resources that they need to be a problem solver.
Right.
And let's talk about that for just a minute. About what kind of resources are we talking about what are the resources?
So it would be tools. I mean, part of this
Mhm.
falls into policy. And so there's a whole thing, we could probably break this down if we have an opportunity between now and the close of the month of May while we're focused on collections. We can dig into this thing about what is by policy, what does the collection supervisor, whoever's directing collections, and we realize a lot of the dealers who would be listening today, they're small. Their collection department is one person. And so you don't have even a collection manager. That's a dealer and a collector, right? So there
Mhm.
could be the same thing. But either way, regardless of what that chain of command looks like, we need a clear boundary for policy. We need a
Mhm.
clear way for adjusting the policy, like on the fly. Like
Mhm.
we need to be able to make exceptions, and so we need a process for that, because no point in writing policies if we're just going to let everybody have gray lines on everything.
Mhm.
We have to have boundaries, but we have a way to make that exception. So you're talking about the dealer has certain authority, a collection supervisor might have certain authority, then you would move into the collectors would have very limited authority. But one of the things we would want to do is make sure that they have ample authority, because if we're going to charge them with the thing of being problem solvers, if I sit over here trying to solve problems with an empty tool belt,
Mhm.
I can't be very effective. So it's like,
So I think that when you're talking about collectors having limited authority, that's like in general, but if that you want to give them the authority to be able to use the tools in their tool belt.
yeah, and I'll just give you a quick list. Like, these are just some of the first things that came to mind. Like, I would say, if maybe I could give my collectors the authority to authorize a tow. If a customer's car is broken down, then if I, as a collector, could authorize the order of a tow, maybe it still goes through a chain of command, but I have the authority to arrange that immediately to get a customer's car moved to wherever they need to, a mechanic of their choice, whatever. So it's one example. Another one would be, do I have the authority to grant a customer more time? We don't love verbal. We don't recommend verbal
No,
extensions.
yeah.
We want to see that stuff in writing. In this day and age, it's so easy to throw initial on something on the phone that we would be advocating for that, something in writing. So a collector has those tools available. I'll give you some others. And this is a question of who has the authority to do this. So if I'm meeting with a customer who is, and maybe I'm on the phone, virtually, whatever, and the customer's asking for more time, then I'm going to have certain remedies that I know. And the way I trained that is I would ask dealers, collection supervisors, even collectors, regardless of who their authority is, whatever tools I have in my tool belt, or whatever, um, cards I might be able to pull out, I kind of have them in my back pocket and I sit on them just as long as
And
I
that's
can.
that's a training thing. It's
Yeah.
like you're not throwing out here's the biggest thing we can give, but you're working your way into
Yeah, and
how
it's
can I
just
help?
one of these things that
Yeah.
look, the reality is the folks, even though their intentions are good, these are human beings. And if we
Mhm.
give them a path of least resistance, they're going to want it next week again and the month after that. And so it's like, we have to be judicious about those things. We want
Mhm.
to solve problems, and we first want to solve problems without drawing out the big card, the big gun, and solving the problem that way. Because once the customer understands that, that tool is available, then you can expect they're going to ask for it again and again. So this is just training. This is how, but regardless, I'm going to have a certain amount of tools, I hope, as a collector to solve problems. And, sometimes that's a payment arrangement. Hopefully it's in writing with some documentation, to support the thing. And so we've got that authority, but whatever that looks like, it's like having the authority to, actually go in and fix certain things. So you need to take a break.
No, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I saw
Yeah.
a grimace. So I thought you need to step out. But yeah, I think we just feel like this is an area where there's a lot of opportunity for dealers in this space. And I think this is true regardless of the size of the operation, that, anything we can do to advocate for the dealer gives us, or give a chance to advocate rather for the consumer, then that is going to increase our chance of success. When we have some relationship with them, they know us, they trust us, they can count on us to be truthful with them, and they'll be truthful in return with us. And maybe not the first time, like, we understand that's not sometimes the nature of our customers, as Tommy says, have been survivors. They've been, and part of how they've survived is making promises and buying time. And, so that's the nature of the consumer in this credit sector. But it's something that can be solved. And we know that it's incumbent upon us as the dealer creditor to install these measures. And, Michelle touched on the training thing. I hope all of our departments are having routine training, but certainly our collections team. And if we bring them together periodically, only to offer them, as you said, resources, new tools and resources, some sort of reaffirmation to reaffirm for them that we've got their back. Right. And so we can kind of, because we see that turnover is really high in collection departments, and we've got to do better about that. We've got to, because it's a difficult job. And if we get somebody in there that's good, let's give them what they need to do the job and enjoy it and be able to stay with it. It's a kind of often a thankless job. And it's something that we need to get better about, giving them tools, giving them resources, education, whatever, and backing them up to make sure they've got what they need, give them the support they need.
Absolutely. I want to, for me, I'm going to squirrel just a little bit, but this is about collections. We talked this when we started about what percentage of our customer base, our book of business are, they just kind of like do their thing. They pay every week or every other week. We don't really have any problems. We might have one phone call or none with them through the course of this 3-year relationship. Imagine if you really did have collectors reach out in a friendly and not reactionary but proactive way to your entire book of business, to all of the people on a regular cadence of some kind. It's like, this is what's happening. Hey, we'd love to have you come in. Imagine when you can build that kind of relationship. These are people that are not problems, but it's like, man, I really like these people. Imagine how much more likely you are to get them in the next car, how much more likely you are to have them say, hey, Joe, I saw you're looking for a car. You need to go talk to these people. They're awesome. How likely you are to have those referrals, how likely you are to have those repeat customers if you are taking just some time proactively to keep a good relationship, a friendly face in front of people as they go about their day.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. I think it's something that we can do. And we're all the time working with dealers on the marketing side of their business, is just saying, let your community get to know you. You're a good person. Let them get to know you.
And your first community is your book of business.
Yeah.
That's like the entire thing. That's, your collectors should know the people that are in your book of business.
Yeah. And I'm just saying, look, social media provides an excellent opportunity for us to let the folks in our community get to know us, because we're not bad people. And so we have a little bit of a PR thing that works against us in this industry, used car dealers in general, and then buy here, pay here on top of that. It's like we have some stuff to overcome, which all that really means for me is just let the community get to know the real you, because the real you is a really decent group of people. And so again, it starts with the dealer, But it's like for some reason we think we got to sell these cars with valve cover leaks and weak tires, and like let's let the customers get to know and feel good about us. And so that's about the community. And so that's why I think marketing, this is kind of on the marketing side, but there's nothing we can do. We've verified, a number of occasions, we've verified that we know that nothing can have more of an impact on your future sales, repeat and referral business than the relationship your collectors have with your customers. So that whole 3-4 year relationship, how that goes is going to have a lot to do with how much business we do later and how successful those customers that are on the books now are going to be. Right. So it's, there's always tons to talk about around that, but I think it's, that we kind of covered the part that I thought was most important.
I mean, to kind of like base it or I'll boil it all down, the best way to keep from having friction and drama with your collection department is to help your book of business know who they are, and build a relationship with them, and also give them the tools that they need to be able to effectively solve problems.
Right. Sure.
All right.
Yep.
All right.
Let's
Is
wrap
that good?
up.
All
yeah.
right.
Let's wait.
Well,
come back Friday. Got Brent Carmichael.
Brent Carmichael on Friday. We're looking forward to having him. He's always such a pleasure.
Yeah.
Have a great Wednesday. We really appreciate you listening in, and we will chat with you all on Friday. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.